Good afternoon. This is Greg Novak, Chair of CAMPO. It's our call to order for our September 10th, 2025 meeting. Have a roll call, please.
Chair Novak,
Here.
Vice Chair Maloney,
Here.
Member Bagwell,
Here.
Member Casanelli,
Here.
Member Dotson,
Here.
Member Erb, Member Schutte,
Here.
ex officio Member Kepler.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All righty, thank you very much. We're on to item 3, our first opportunity for public comment. Do we have anyone willing to speak, come forward at this point? Mr. Costa, come out.
Good evening. My name is Mark Costa, resident of Carson City. My public comment is regarding agenda item 5B, which is the project prioritization criteria methodology system or summary that's going to be discussed and presented today. And I know there's going to be discussion about this and more information put out during the presentation. But there are some comments I wanted to go ahead and make first and put out some questions that I hope are answered during the presentation or the discussion that we have afterwards on that. The summary looks like it's fairly well straightforward, put together, and some cases make sense. And was very happy to see that there's a tie-in between this summary and the goal areas for CAMPO and how well a particular project meets a particular goal area, is evaluated and scored, and eventually ranked according to that. And I think that's good. The questions I have regarding this is, how is this system derived? A little bit more detail into that. And how were the weights determined for that? For example, safety has a weight of 22.5%, and wanted to know how that was configured and what input was used to get that, because obviously that's going to be very key. Had a question, is the 5-district yearly system of organizing projects still going to be implemented? In other words, are we still going to have a given district once every 5 years on that, or is the ranking going to go ahead and supersede that on what gets done? Wanted to know, as we know, some projects are funded by different types of money or funding, federal or state or local, and wanted to see if it was under consideration that maybe we would go ahead and break out the funding or have separate summaries for the different types of funding with an amount for each funding type that's going to go ahead and be used. And lastly, I know that we have a public meeting scheduled for the regional transportation plan, which this project prioritization is going to be part of, and sometime after September 23rd. And if this is going to go ahead and be discussed and input gotten at that meeting before it's finally solidified and implemented. So with that, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Costa. We have anybody else that wants to come up for public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our next item. Possible action, the approval of the minutes of our August 13th, 2025 meeting.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, it passes unanimously. All right, on to our next item, public meeting items. 5A, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the federal fiscal year 2026-2028 Title VI program for the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Jump Around Carson Transit System. And Marcus, are you going to take us through this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marcus Myers, Transit Coordinator. As a condition of receiving federal funding, CAMPO and Jump Around Carson are required to keep a Title VI program that's in compliance with the U.S. Department of Transportation's regulations. CAMPO and JAC are committed to ensuring that no person on the basis of race, color, or national origin are discriminated against or excluded from participation with JAC Transit by CAMPO employees, affiliates, or contractors. On January 11th of 2023, the CAMPO board approved the federal fiscal year 2023 to 2025 Title VI program. This item presents for approval an updated Title VI program for federal fiscal year 2026 to 2028, which meets all US DOT requirements. Updates to this program include language regarding requirements to monitor and assist subrecipients and their Title VI plans, removal of language as it relates to revoked executive orders, and updates to the language assistance plan, specifically as it relates to service availability measures with current available dwelling unit data. Staff held a 15-day public comment period during which no comments were received. Before I turn it over to the board, I would like to bring your attention to page 3 of the Title VI plan on packet page 17. The signature line identifies Greg Novak as chair of the RTC instead of CAMPO. This and a few noted grammatical updates will be corrected as final edits to this plan. Thank you.
Okay, Marcus, thank you very much. So it looks like there's some changes due to the change in administration in DC, and I would expect more to come. And just in case anybody hasn't been paying attention, federal fiscal year ends September 30th, and we don't know what's going to happen between now and then or after, but there are thousands of federal employees who've been getting paid and not working, and that ends September 30th. So I don't know if you're going to notice any difference if they haven't been working, but I don't know if they're going to be replaced either. So at that point, do we have any other questions or comments for the group? This Title VI is a regular action. It's been tweaked a little bit, but looks like a straightforward item. Yes.
Thank you. I just had a couple of suggestions on page 9 or packet page 49 on assistance to, and I understand the limited English proficiency that is changing some of the requirements. However, I think it would be really helpful to have included in printed brochures frequently asked questions for those folks who struggle with English proficiency, just so we really meet again that participation. We don't want to exclude anyone. On page 62, vehicle headway, what is the typical wait time when people are changing buses, let's say at the Walmart, and they're, so what would that be typically?
Generally no more than 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Specific to Walmart, in the route map, that's a timed stop, and it's no more than 8 minutes.
Great. And I ask that because I know last month, when there was some discussion or presentation that some folks don't quite understand the availability of Jack, and that sometimes it doesn't seem like they can get from point A to point B in a timely manner. Some of these bus changes actually are user-friendly. So thank you on that. And then I know we've had several public comments. Ms. Formaster has spoken about a bus stop a little bit further east. And so I know Route 2A and 2B, it's the same route but different directions. I was wondering, is there a way to reduce the distance on one of those routes and have a bus stop a little bit further east? And my guess is that's been looked into just because it has been spoken to several times, but I'm just wondering what the status is.
Yeah, it is absolutely something that we've looked at, and we're continuing to look at as we work through the Coordinated Human Services Plan.
Okay. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Any other members have questions at all? Marcus, do you know if any of the bus drivers are bilingual? That's probably above and beyond what's requirement here, but,
Off the top, I don't know.
okay. I just thought I'd ask us. I didn't quite see it in here, so well, they got enough job already, but we'll
Right.
see how that goes. Okay,
Mr. Chair, we do have a representative from our transit operator who might be able to know if that's okay with you.
sure.
He's gesturing that 2 drivers are bilingual.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. That goes over and above what's required. It's good to know. All right, do we have any public comment on this item, since it is an action item? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for a motion.
I move to approve the federal fiscal year 2026-2028 Title VI program
As amended.
as amended. Thank you.
As amended. FAQs. Okay, any further comments? Okay, I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Hearing none, it passes unanimously. All right, we move on to agenda item 5B. And it looks like I have a disclosure, Ms. Schutte?
Yes, thank you. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Okay, and again, for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding approval of using a project prioritization criteria and methodology summary for prioritizing projects as part of the CAMPO 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, including discussion on recommended criterion, scoring, weighting, and other topics to be used for prioritizing projects in the RTP. Chris Martinovich has the lead on this one, so thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. The CAMPO RTP Prioritization Criteria and Methodology Framework, as included in Exhibit 1, was developed to assist CAMPO staff to prioritize projects that it will receive through the Regional Transportation Project for possible inclusion in the Regional Transportation Plan. I think I said project there, but I mean Regional Transportation Plan. As a note, the items here developed in this criteria were developed based on input from the CAMPO board over a series of meetings. They were based on input received and discussed at the previous meeting as well, as where there was discussion about wanting to see a prioritized and weighting and scoring system associated with how CAMPO would prioritize projects. The projects themselves will come from partner agencies, as well as being NDOT, Carson City, Lyon County, and Douglas County, as well as any completed corridor studies or other projects that CAMPO has done internally. These projects will be prioritized into three main categories. The three categories are funded projects that are anticipated to be completed in the short term, meaning between 2026 and 2035. Category 2, which are funded projects, which are those longer range projects that are anticipated to be completed between 2036 and 2050, and then unfunded projects. The available funding was discussed at the prior meetings, and based on some updates and estimates, and it's still a little bit of a moving target until we finalize the numbers, we estimate that currently there's $865 million available for all transportation-related projects through the year 2050. And transportation-related projects means roadways, multimodal, transit, things like that. So $865 million is the estimate we have to work with for all transportation projects as of right now. And so those projects that come through this prioritization process will be identified and funded based on that available $865 million. The prioritization framework itself, as was mentioned during the public comment, is based on the 6 goal areas of safety, mobility, preservation, quality of life, adaptability, and prosperity. And within each of those goal areas, we've established a number of criteria or measures that we can score and weight each of the individual projects within these individual goal areas. The scoring inputs and summaries of each of the different criterion are shown in the tables in the attached exhibit to this item, along with the scores. Each of the 6 goal areas or the 6 factors are weighted, as was mentioned. The weights are listed there, 22.5% for safety, 22.5% for mobility, 20% for preservation, 15% quality of life, and 10% each for adaptability and prosperity scores being the goal areas. These weights were determined by a number of factors. First of all, they were determined in alignment to ensure they were in alignment with our goal areas and with NDOT's One Nevada plan, which has similar scoring criteria and similar goals. And just as a side note, all our goal areas, which these criteria fall under, are similar to those goal areas of our partner agencies, Lyon County, NDOT, and Carson City, Douglas County. So trying to get that synergy and alignment for those goal areas. The weights were also based on discussion we've had here and on the premium we've put on safety by taking safety-related projects like the Local Road Safety Plan, prioritizing preservation of ensuring we have a sustainable and a transportation system with good pavement, good infrastructure, keeping those elements good. But in large part, the weighting was based on input received during the public survey, and specifically and primarily questions 11 and 12. And question 11 talked about the vision for transportation in the future, and it noted that 42% of the respondents wanted a reliable transportation system for ease of mobility. The second highest rated score on that was 37% of respondents wanted a safe transportation infrastructure. So we're seeing safety and mobility coming out from those questions. Question 12 asked respondents to rank their priorities. And 3 priorities, connectivity, safety, and road condition, were 3 of the top 4 priorities of question 12. And so we used those factors from the public survey, and in addition to those items I mentioned earlier, to develop these weightings for the scoring system used in this prioritization process. When we look at the prioritization process, there are some additional criteria to be considered. They're listed on packet page 81. They include site-specific safety data, public input, agency priority, meaning what does the agency see as its priorities for funding a particular project. Project readiness, meaning how ready is the project? Is it sort of as an idea, or does it have some actual scope development behind it and could be moved forward if funding was available? Benefit cost information, if that's available. And lastly, available funding. We do have projects that have some funding and could get more funding more easily than other projects. So we're taking account those decisions into our decision-making process to score projects. These are really a kind of a yes, no, 1-0 type scoring system, and they'll be really used to separate and differentiate projects if we see some ties, or if we see some other factors that we want to include to prioritize and make sure projects are in those funded lists and the appropriate categories. Once we go through this process, another component I do want to mention, follow up to the public meeting, and Mr. Costa mentioned it, we have scheduled a public meeting, more to come on that in the Transportation Manager's Report. It'll be September 24th. A public input from that meeting will be weighted and considered as part of this prioritization process. If there are projects that seem to be really important to the group, we want to make sure we consider those needs as well. I did want to take you through an example of one of these just real quick here, and this will be provided as late material following the meeting. It's a pretty simple exhibit for the purposes of discussion here. We haven't received all the projects from the individual agencies at this point. We're still waiting for that. So CAMPO has taken a look at a few of the projects that were in the current RTP and run them through some initial scoring to see how all this would kind of work and shake out. And so I just wanted to present here, this is the North Carson Street Complete Streets project, and I've selected this one as it'll be discussed at the RTC meeting following the CAMPO meeting. But you can see here that generally how the scoring of this particular project would look. I can see if I can zoom in here a little bit. So basically we have the project title, we have the project description, project type, limits of the project, anticipated implementation year, and I'll note that this is all preliminary. We haven't received the final information from Carson City, so this is information from the current RTP. And then we have the scoring criteria here, and so we have the safety goal area, the mobility goal area, the preservation goal area, quality of life, prosperity, adaptability. And when we've gone through and answered all these questions and applied the scores, the total score for the project unweighted is 70. And when we apply the weighted scores, applying those factors to those totals, we have a weighted score of 12.425. And so all of the projects that CAMPO receives through this through the RTP process will be scored and weighted similarly as this one as an example. And so this is just an example of how that'll work. We don't know all the other factors yet because, again, we don't have that information from Carson City to be able to make a determination on that at this time. So that's why that one's still to be determined. But with that, we're planning on getting that information, running these through, and possible presentation at a future CAMPO board meeting. With that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, for any questions that there are.
Okay. Looks like you guys have spent some time and thought on this. Is the process fairly easy for you guys to implement once you get all the inputs from the different folks?
Yes, the process is fairly easy. We've submitted and reached out to our partner agencies with an input form where it's drop downs. They select the drop downs. When we get that information back, it's an easy copy and paste into the very similar spreadsheet, so it'll self-score, self-populate. It's a pretty straightforward process. I did want to note, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
in response to a couple of the public comments about the prioritization process, this is a separate prioritization process for the CAMPO Regional Transportation Plan. It is not superseding or replacing Carson City's district prioritization process. We have to consider as CAMPO projects received from NDOT, projects received in Lyon County, projects received in Douglas County, and we needed a system to account for their needs and Carson City's needs, as well as the vast and multifaceted project types that CAMPO receives, whether they're bridge projects or roadway projects or multimodal projects or safety projects, transit projects. All of that has to be considered as part of this. So it's a separate and independent process than Carson City's elements.
Right. And just for clarification, at the RTC meeting after this one, there are some specific projects that we'll be discussing, but you'll have similar input from the different counties and NDOT as well. And, when I was thinking about it today, I said, all right, we're looking essentially 25 years in the future for CAMPO. And I don't know if at some point in time, if we look back 25 years, what have we done since the year 2000? What's really changed in the network? So it's something to consider maybe before the public meeting or just get the discussion going. Besides the freeway, we've had different streets go in or better or worse and, jack and all that. So if there's a way to look back, that might help the public understand what's realistically going to happen in the next 25 years. So at some point, the freeway will be done. It might need to be widened. Or I asked, Rebecca, the north side of town at East Lake Interchange, right outside of CAMPO, that's going to need work in the next 25 years. So we'll see. Do we have any other questions or comments at this point from our board here? There's quite a bit in here, but it's relatively straightforward as well. Sure, go ahead.
I would just like to clarify, there's an upcoming public meeting. And so they do or do not get to give public comment for consideration on this prioritization plan. I think I wasn't clear on your comment.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to clarify that what we're shooting for with the public meeting is comment on the projects themselves, not the project scoring criteria.
Right, okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody on the record understood what you were saying there.
Yeah, so the action item today is to approve this process, including the weights
Right.
and the scoring process.
I do have another question.
Oh, sure.
So when I look at the weights to determine, I always in my mind want to kind of run, and I really appreciate that you were trying to run a project through. If I look at the weights and things were close for a project priority, and I look at these and then say, that's when adaptability or prosperity could push a project over, right? So if I kind of have a tie or things are close, then that's what I would utilize to, in essence, break the tie. And I just wanted to make sure that we think these are the proper weights, and that we don't, I just wonder is whether or not should safety have a little higher weight? I guess I'm always, especially when we have known safety concerns and we work so hard on our safety plan, we work so hard for 0 fatalities. We tout that as really a mission of everything that we do. And so I'm just wondering and talking out loud and making sure that if we adopt this, that we are all on the page of that. The question for me being, should quality of life, adaptability, and prosperity each be 10, and we take the other 5 points from quality of life and split them between safety and mobility? I just hate to see maybe one of those other things pull me off of a safety project.
I was gonna wait and see what the public had to say, but I'm actually leaning the other way, respectfully,
Higher
Madam
the other
Mayor.
way?
Campo as a region is not the highest, we have safety issues, and when we know we have safety issues, we take care of safety issues, right? And we identify projects to address safety issues like North Carson up at Nye, right? We identify it and we take action. But what I've heard in the survey, question 11 that Chris said, reliable for ease of mobility was higher than safety. What I've heard from the public is maintain the roads. What I've heard from NDOT is there's not enough money for maintenance. I've heard that from Lyon County, from Carson City, from Douglas County. There's not enough road maintenance funding. And so for me, I'm thinking about regionally, preservation seems to be the highest priority. And then following that, of course, safety is important. But we would never, well, from what I've heard is the public wants to see the system maintained before they want to see additional components added.
I think that's actually what I'm trying to say is I think quality of life has too high of a score at 15, and I'm just concerned that the other components are so close, they're going to score the same, and those are going to throw me over a different way. And so I'm willing to discuss where we see which component. I just think that and I'm willing to look at preservation. But I have to tell you, whenever there is a death on a road, the public comes out pretty hot and heavy, and we don't always have the money to just run out and go fix it. It isn't true. We don't. And I'm more than happy to take potentially the 5 points from quality of life and spread them between those three. I'm just saying those are of higher priority to me than the bottom three.
I would agree with that.
Something that stood out to me is, looking at the mobility, I see that first box where it provides access to essential destinations and services. I see this as an element of safety. I see people having access to medical appointments, to food, to work, all of those things. And so I believe the mobility and safety actually overlap quite a bit. So I'm comfortable with those scores being the same. I also, in quality of life, the section where it talks about housing and transportation costs as percentage of income, potential environmental or right-of-way impacts. I appreciate the consideration on this, and I think that also kind of lends itself to safety in terms of access, again, having the funding and the money for healthy foods to be able to get to work, to help offset some of the housing impacts that if somebody, their transportation and housing costs are too high in respect to their income. So I absolutely appreciate what you say, and I agree. However, I think that it is fairly well balanced because of the overlap that some of these things have. And those areas then that, if they are equal, those other criteria, the specific safety data can then be used to offset equal numbers or the public input, that kind of thing. So that's my.
Any other comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I think that the first three factors probably should be ranked higher than the last two there. But one thing I have struggled with in this whole prioritization process development is it's hard for me to envision that we're going to rank every project with this number, in 1 through however many projects there are. And that's how we're going to fund these projects, because it's not going to work that way. You're going to have a pot of money for preservation projects. And if I look at the way the RTIP has been done in the past, I mean, it's just a big block of preservation projects that are going to be prioritized. And, the funding for those are going to move forward. So there may be some nuances, I guess, as to one project falling out over another, but I really don't see that this is the absolute way things are going to be built, funded, et cetera. That'd be my comments.
I think I agree with Mr. Dotson that I think staff is doing good work here, trying to say what criteria are we going to use to take a lump of projects that everyone wants and say, I have these limited dollars, and what is a methodology that we can utilize to say, okay, if I kind of agree with them, I'm going to have X amount of dollars for preservation, and here are 9 projects in the preservation category. How do I do number 1 or number 2? And something that's nothing in here weighted wise is the cost of the project. And anybody that doesn't think cost is an element of decision, you're kind of kidding yourself there, right? Because at the end of the day, some of them we look at and say, okay, I have $1 million. So project 1 and 2 are automatically out, even though they might have scored number 1, right? But there's no way we're going to get to it. So nowhere in here, and maybe that really should just be, that's the other factor score. You know, it's not plausible is a score that says, yep, it really is the highest on the safety curve. It really is the highest on the mobility, but we're simply not going to get to that project. So, and I like the question, do you really think you can run this criteria on every project? That everyone that's inputting will understand. So let me do it this way. I saw one. So if I were to look on packet page 78, and I want to make sure I'm understanding what we're even potentially approving. The last one on the preservation score, is this project a new road or road expansion? If it's a yes, it gets 0 points because preservation should only be the existing system. And I just want to make sure we're all understanding. So where does it's a new road or expansion get points? Is that under what, where?
It's included 2 columns or 2
mobility?
rows up on that same box. Does this project include new construction, roadway, multi-use path, sidewalk?
So that's enhance existing. My question is, where are points for a new road or a road expansion anywhere within this? I would have expected when I went to mobility, no, that's existing. Does this project enhance existing roadway? If
The-
I'm going to put in a new road, is that under mobility?
It's in the row right above the existing column. I hope that one's the one you're looking for.
Well, then I still don't understand the table. I'm having a really tough time understanding why question 2 on that gets a yes, but the last question, the yeses get 0 point, if you're telling me it's the same question.
The second one in that table that says, does this project include new construction, meaning roadway, multi-use path, sidewalk, transit, et cetera? If it is new construction, as in brand new, nothing was there previously, it would have some points. If it's an expansion, if it's a new road expansion, right, we're taking an existing road and we're expanding and we're building a brand new road, that goes against preserving infrastructure, and so it would get 0 points for that.
They're both a new road. Include new construction. The last one is an or. So am I reading that wrong? Is this project a new road? That means it wasn't there before and it's
Correct.
new, which is the
That's what
same
that
thing
means.
as the second one. So was it not supposed to be an or?
One's for road, one's for more general items to capture the wide variety of projects. It may include roadway, but it may include a multi-use path, it may include a transit, it may include other elements that are not specifically related to a new road or a roadway expansion. So that's the reason there's a difference in the questions.
It's not reading well to me.
So
I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm trying to say, if I can't read this, how am I going to have consistency from every group that's putting in their projects and they all read it the same and score it the same? Because that's the most important thing to me, is that the element is well defined. And if I'd give it 2 points, so would Lucia, so would Lisa, right? That we all read that the same. And so I'm just telling you that number 2 and number 4, if it's a new road, seems to be counterintuitive to me.
Mayor Bagwell, to my point earlier, this table right here, if the project spends money on widening an existing road with an additional bike path, it's going to get 5 points for enhancing an existing roadway with a sidewalk or a multi-use path, rather than a project that preserves pavement, which would just get 3 points under the first question.
I think
And
this whole
that's
table.
not what I've heard
Right.
from the public that they want.
Well, I'm going to just agree that the preservation criteria and measures need help. Is that my polite way? I think they're all, because again, she's correct, right? Does this project enhance existing multi-use transit capital, get 5 points? Well, you just asked me if it's new multi-use path sidewalk widening, it gets 2 points. So would it get 7?
Can you repeat that, Mayor? I'm
So
sorry.
let's say I have an existing roadway.
Yep.
And I'm gonna widen it, or I'm gonna expand it so I can put in a bike path or a multi-use path, right? I'm gonna get 2 points on question 2, and I'm gonna get 5 points. So I'm gonna get
Correct.
7 points for a bike path or a multi-use path
That's correct.
versus I want to preserve the roadway.
If you were to do a pure preservation project, which we can argue if pure preservation is regionally significant type project or not, depending on that. But it would be scored as 3 points on the second question, 5 points on the third question, 3 points on the last question. Because it's not new construction, right? So it's
No, it
not a
is.
new, preservation's
Oh,
not
just
new.
a pure preservation.
Pure preservation.
Right, with no.
Maintain existing infrastructure. We would have 3 points as a no. Does it enhance the existing roadway, multi-use path, sidewalk? Yes, it would, because it's enhancing it by preserving it. And then is it a new? The answer is no, it's not new, so it would receive 3 points.
So I think that my point, I'm trying to drive home the point that we haven't put enough examples through the criteria to make sure that we're getting the result that we all expect and that we know we're voting on. I guess that's the better way for me to say it, is to take 3 or 4 different kinds of examples, run them through this criteria, give them a point value and say, did you get the expected result that we would all say, yep, that's how we would have scored that project? Is that, maybe that's a better way for me to say it. And I think you started to go after it when you put the 1 in here. I just think you didn't go quite far enough through a couple
Well-
other scenarios, because I want to make sure that a preservation project, unless you're actually telling me that, no, we want to give more credit if we're adding a multi-use path, that is this body's wish to score higher for multi-use paths than a preservation project. And maybe you'll have to tell me what Lyon County thinks and Douglas County thinks, and I don't know.
Go ahead.
Well, if I may. My question is, how much weight does the public input carry with the scores? Because I know there's projects that you get much more public input on than others, and probably much less public input on some of the projects in my neck of the woods. So, but I'm looking at the page 81, and you do call out that part of the criteria you're using includes available funding and professional judgment. So I'm just wondering on that input, public input, if that makes sense.
Chris, on this, it looks like we're, getting into the weeds on some of this stuff, but this discussion does have to happen because this sets the whole criteria. Under preservation, I don't see any mention, maybe it's buried in here someplace, about if one of the agencies has an asset management program that's supposed to generate where these projects come from.
Did it rank in their asset management, or did it, right?
A lot of work has been done on that outside by each agency, what's their relative priorities. Even NDOT has, ongoing freeway and bridge replacement programs that I think we're not really going to overrule that. We'd like to just use it as input as well.
The other issue on the preservation that I'm kind of wondering about is we have a PCI survey and ranking, and how does that play into the ranking with this system? Because we try to do that PCI survey to determine kind of the method of restoring the existing pavement and coming up with a ranking that way. So how do those two correlate?
I think, we need to step back again. This is Campo regional outlook for the next 25 years. So some of this stuff gets analyzed on an annual basis as well at either Campo or RTC. So, we can't overly analyze this. But we do need some relative weights and some clarification. And I think staff has done a good job pulling this together. And as long as the criteria are understandable to everybody and repeatable, that we could move forward. But at this point, it sounds like we have enough items that need further clarification. We hadn't gotten any public input yet either. So, any other questions at this point? Okay. No. All right. Having said that, I will open it up for public comments since we haven't taken any action yet and there's enough discussion. And, staff has done a good job, but that's why we have these meetings, to sift through it.
Mark Costa, a Carson City resident. There's something that I wanted to point out about the process and a benefit of this process here that I didn't hear mentioned. And one is that when that's published and it becomes very transparent, you see in real life, real terms, how the goals interact, how we see different projects, and how they work. Now, Jim Dotson's 100% correct. It's not going to go ahead and work out, exactly how we do it from 1 through 10 or 1 through 20. But there should be a process there where we can go ahead and remediate or adjust the ranking based on political and other measures, where you may want to rank number 8 project above the number 5 project for that. And but you can see very clearly with this system is, what's the impact on that? What's the cost? And, if we do put number 8, which has a higher cost above 5, 5 doesn't get done, even though it was ranked higher by the system than number 8 was. And it becomes very transparent to the public and to the board and to the staff what we did and why we did it. And it's also a way to go ahead and determine if your system really works well. If you're having to go ahead and do extensive remediation and extensive adjusting for the projects, then probably need to go ahead and revisit your prioritization system, because it's really not doing what you wanted it to. You're having to go ahead and go in there and adjust after the fact for that. While you're always going to have some of that, obviously if the whole thing gets turned upside down, then we don't have a prioritization system, and we can't justify to the public on what we're doing for that. Because we know that there's certain roads here that are in very bad shape and that have to be fixed, and there's other considerations involved with that. If we expand a road for complete streets, remember when you build something and you build something new, you have to maintain it. And so there's more to be maintained afterwards for that. So I think this system here, it illustrates what we're trying to do and what we're doing, and we can always adjust it if needed, and we will, because of political reasons or an important project comes up. But we need to go ahead and be transparent and see the costs, the opportunity costs for doing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Acosta. Do we have any other public comment at this point? Okay, seeing none. Chris, would you like to weigh in on what you've heard so far?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would, yes. In terms of some comments related to public input, Commissioner Casanelli mentioned, we want that public input on the projects, and that will be a factor. It's not directly a scoring factor because it's hard to know what kind of public input we're going to get on any given project. Is it one public comment, two public comments, 18 public comments? Is that the scoring criteria? So we're tentatively using all of those other ones as sort of a 1-0 type scoring system. Do they have available funding? Do they have public input? Things like that, and keeping it relatively simple and straightforward. In terms of the preservation component, I'll get back to that in a second. Asset management priorities, our way of accounting for this, because not all of the agencies have the same or similar asset management priorities, is looking at that criteria of agency priority. Does the agency make this a priority for themselves? And can we consider that? If from their asset management standpoint, this is a really important project, then tell us that information, and we can use that through the scoring criteria as a factor rather than projects that may or may not even be in an asset management system trying to be scored. The last item here I'll note is PCI ranking. We definitely considered the use of pavement condition index, but not all projects have a pavement condition index. Pavement condition index doesn't exist on NDOT roads, so that would change some of the scoring criteria and throw some variability. Multi-use paths, we don't have pavement condition index. Sidewalks, there is no such thing for pavement conditions. So it's trying to balance a lot of different parameters with all different types of projects and score them in a fair and consistent manner as best available. And I think this discussion today is exactly why this type of thing is so challenging and why NDOT works so hard on their One Nevada process to make that something that can be used and benefits to putting out projects. And we're struggling with it here in the meeting. A couple of recommendations, suggestions, potential edits for your all consideration is on the preservation criteria. One option could be to eliminate the third one down. Does this project enhance existing roadway? Eliminate that completely and assign all of those 5 points to the first one, maintain our region's existing transportation infrastructure. So if we maintain it, gets the points. If we're doing something new, it doesn't get any points. Does it a new construction? From a multi-use path perspective, we still want to score multi-use paths. We still want to score connectivity. There's value in scoring
Yes.
that. So there's still some points there, and then the road expansion would remain as it is. So that would be my recommendation, and that would further enhance the scoring specifically for preserving infrastructure, existing infrastructure. I'm happy to make that as an option. Related to the weighting, I'm also happy to make adjustments. One option could be to take 2.5 points out of quality of life and assign it to preservation so that safety, mobility, and preservation are all equal at 22.5. Quality of life goes down to 12.5, balancing some of the comments I heard today. If that was an option, we could certainly do that. That seemed to be middle ground based on my conversation, but if I've erred in that, please let me know. Then the last item to your item, Mayor, is related to the project. We did run a few different scenarios with a few different projects to see what they would be. We started with, well, what if we just ranked them all the same scoring, 16.5 or whatever it is %. It showed some projects that we don't know that they are the top priority. It showed some projects that maybe this isn't the right scoring, right weighting system. And so we considered a few projects through here to see what is the right balance. And factoring in that public input from the survey, running that scenario last was like, hey, this gives a reasonable list of projects. And that's why we settled on this one through all that process. So that concludes my comments I wanted to add based on the conversation.
Okay. Chris, as a follow-up from me, we'll see if the rest have some comments. About how many projects you think will be sifting through this?
My estimate is probably close to 70.
70, all right. It's still, that's manageable. Okay, and just since it is regional transportation, how do transit projects fit through the system?
When they come to transit operation type projects, changing service, expanding service, they're not being included as part of this analysis. That's too different and too complicated for this scoring system to comprehend. But if it comes to transit-related infrastructure, building infrastructure, things like a park and ride lot or a downtown transit center, something like that, that is being included in this system.
Ask that, okay. Any other
I can live with the recommended changes. I think it meets what I was trying to get to, and I think it also, I think it would work if we made them 22.5, 22.5, 22.5, 12.5, 10, and 10. And eliminating the complexity, I think, of the question and question 3 and upping the maintenance to the 5 points. I think that certainly fits what I was aiming at, so I could live with that.
Yeah, I think we all agree that 70 projects plus or minus running through this system, there'll be a lot more discussion. It's not going to be absolute.
Oh, no, I
And
think.
especially other factors at the end and, the real world
Yeah.
stuff. So
The
they'll,
other factor part will come in with public comment,
yep,
cost, et cetera, et cetera.
yep. Okay.
But at least it'll get us to a starting discussion point of here are 2 or 3 projects that scored. Now, how do we select out of that grouping? I think it will do that for us.
Okay, thanks, Chris, for making those changes. Any other questions, John?
How often will this document be updated in the 25 years? Because businesses change, traffic patterns change, fatalities change. What do you think, how often this will be updated?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Erb. With the last RTP, we only amended it once. I could see us amending a couple of times for sure. We want to make sure we're amending based on not just perceived changes, but documented changes because of corridor studies or traffic studies or other plan implementations and things like that. That's what really drives the selection or creation or inputs for why these projects are what they are and where they've come from. So it could be a travel demand model. A big development comes in, the travel demand model changes. We need to look at a new project. That's a good reason to change. So, it's not static, so there's opportunity for change. One of the elements we're planning for with this new regional transportation plan is to make the project list an appendix and kind of take it out of the main body of the document so that if we do have to make amendments, it's going to be easier for us to change without reformatting and rechanging page numbers and things like that. So that's similar to what other MPOs here in the state do. So it'll be a little bit easier to change going forward, but it's hard to predict the specific number.
And again, we're looking at a regional transportation plan between now and 2050. And I'd be willing to bet that Campo's boundaries change before 2050. Just guessing,
You think the census will do something to us?
Yeah, I don't know. Things are going to change, but that's why we have monthly meetings and we have good staff and, we're reacting to the real world problems we have here. So any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I guess I will ask for an emotion that with some changes that we've discussed here.
I move to approve the use of the project prioritization criteria and methodology for use in prioritizing projects in the RTP with the change to preservation to 22.5%, quality of life change to 12.5%, and the changes in the criteria and measures. In the preservation scoring, the first question will move to yes, 5 points. The third criteria measure will be eliminated. I think I got that.
We
was
got
what
the gist and we've got it on tape. So
Yeah,
we'll sit
that's what we
through it.
discussed.
We're moving all 5 points up to the first one.
That's what
so
I did.
That would be 8.
Total of 8, yeah. The movement of the 5 to a total of 8. It's good to clarify, it's 8 total.
Okay, everybody understands it, and if so, could I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. With that, I will put it out to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion passes unanimously. Thank everybody, including the public, for some good input, and we'll be making it through the process. All right. Are you ready for the next item, Chris? Okay. Move on to item 5C for discussion only. Discussion and presentation regarding CAMPO activities during fiscal year 2025, which ended June 30th, which may include discussion of Unified Planning Work Program, budgetary performance, and accomplishment of scheduled milestones. And this is Chris again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. I don't have too much to add beyond what's in the attached annual summary to the staff report. I will note that, we've accomplished a lot and we continue to accomplish a lot. There's a lot of projects in the works right now. US 50, we're kicking off North Carson Street. Of course, the Regional Transportation Plan is a major update for any metropolitan planning organization, so working through that. And we're plugging away, and I appreciate the input, like the last item from this board on that we received to keep us going and in the right direction and right vision, and all the effort that staff puts in as well to continue plugging away at all the tasks we have to do. I know some days it can be a real challenge. One of our big items that we're kind of just watching is changes in the federal level. The uncertainty is definitely a little uncomfortable at times. And now there is some uncertainty at the state level with whether it's state funding or, the security hacks or whatever else is going on at the state level, understanding what comes out and, what funding we're looking at in the future and understanding how to apply that and changes to federal policy and regulations and what does that mean for our workload going forward. So just keeping that in the back of our minds, trying to stay nimble and flexible. Ultimately, we're trying to deliver projects, as you all know, that better the community, that address safety, address mobility, address preservation, those key areas, we've heard loud and clear. So that's really what I wanted to say on that. I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair. I'll turn it back to you, should there be any other thoughts.
And I think if I saw it correctly, you're fully staffed now, so that helps.
Correct, yes.
And using consultants when we need to. So, let's see, I don't have any other questions on this point. Do you guys have any other status review comments at all? It's been a busy year, and thanks for searching out all possible funding sources. We have our fixed revenue that we know is coming in, but I know you guys are going after everything that makes sense and spending the money wisely.
On this report, Chris, the only item in any of the work elements that had a revised completion date was the JAC monitoring report, and I was pleased to see that that's upcoming in October. With the mention of sort of uncertainty and monitoring at the federal level, are there any federal changes that have changed how we are monitoring transit, and has that changed at all, that report that's coming out?
On the transit side, there hasn't been any really change, no. It's pretty much business as usual at this point. We delayed the monitoring report. We'll roll it out together with the annual network monitoring report that we do, and so that's the reason for the delay on that one.
All righty. Hearing no other comments, we'll move on to our next item, Transportation Manager's Report. Chris, you've been kind of busy tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to touch on a few items. First of all, as was mentioned earlier, September 24th here at the Bonanza Room, the Community Center, 6 to 8 p.m. will be our RTP public meeting for projects. So look for that. The press release has gone out, and we'll start posting things around town and in other places, social media as well. Recently, Kelly Norman participated in a radio interview for KNVC, getting the word out about, the regional transportation plan and other elements. If you'd like to listen to that podcast, it's available on their website, KNVC. That's 95.1 here locally. That was pretty fun. Related to safety, speaking of safety, coordination with NDOT occurred related to a letter that was issued by Secretary Duffy. In response to that, CAMPO provided its priority safety projects, which is directly out of the local road safety plan, those projects to NDOT in response to that letter. I'm happy to report that I think 9 of the 10 projects we're doing something on. We're making some progress, whether they're being developed as to a plan like North Carson or actual projects are under construction soon. So we're making some headway there, and that information was provided to assist NDOT in their response to the US DOT. On the federal side, we met internally with the other metropolitan planning organizations and NDOT to get an update on where federal legislation is in regards to reauthorization of a 5-year transportation bill. Indications initially are a lot of promising. A lot of people seem to be working together, so we're fingers crossed. We're optimistic that will be the case. There seems to be a lot of desire to have a bill in place either as the current one expires or soon thereafter. There's a lot of House and Senate members working together behind the scenes to do that. My understanding is it'll be a pretty much a bread and butter surface transportation bill, funding the elements that they've historically funded, and looking at, continuing transit and roadway, highways, and those same programs. What the funding level will be, I guess that's anyone's guess. Early indications are pretty much flat from where it's been out of this bill, which is okay. We can deal with that. It's the unknown that makes it difficult for us to plan for. So known is good. So fingers are crossed, optimistic that at some point, hopefully, we'll have a good transportation bill for the next 5 years once the current one expires at the end of fiscal '26. On the US 50, we're completing that corridor study. I would expect to bring something to this board for review and approval soon. Next meeting or the meeting after, we're finalizing that, coordinating with NDOT on the final recommendations to get their buy-in on that. I was also pleased to report today that I received an update approval letter from NDOT related to our consultant procurement policies. For those, it's sort of an in the weeds sort of item, but it really does create some efficiencies for staff. When we solicit for consultant services, we have policies that we have to follow to ensure we meet all the federal requirements. And those policies were a few years old now, and there were some changes at the state level, there were changes at the federal level. We wanted to make sure our policies were correct and updated, and I received the approval of that. So that just means it's easier for us to just use templates right off the shelf than have to recreate and get reviews internally and externally for all these items. So I wanted to give thanks to NDOT for reviewing and approving. I think Federal Highways was involved in those as well. So those keep us moving forward. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
On Chris's report here before we move ahead. All righty. Rebecca, do we have any news from NDOT, including hacking?
You mean coughing? No.
Sure.
Well, that was good. That was good.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. Yes, I have several notes. I have an update. The first one I wanted to mention was only Monday. It feels like it's been a long week. We presented our 2026 federal fiscal year 2026 annual work program to the Board of Transportation, and they accepted it. So that will now be going forward to the FHWA for approval. We gave it an update on our projects. We do that annually per the U.S. Code, and they didn't have a lot of questions. If you want to see the list of projects, it's on our website under the board. It's all there. Or you can also go to NDOT's website and search STIP work program, and the list of projects are there too. Like I said, though, it will be getting adopted first by FHWA, and then they will be moving forward. As you know, fall's a busy time of year, and we have lots of events going on in the area, from Burning Man to upcoming street vibrations, the candy dance. The reason I bring this up is because there's a lot of people that travel probably coming through Carson City. And as we do that, we just want to remind you that we do suspend any construction that's going on during these special events. And we work with event organizers to make sure that local agencies and everybody are working on safe information, getting information out to the public, and making sure everybody's safe who are traveling to and from and through, if not to, those events. I also want to bring up, as you know, hopefully you know by now, Safe Routes to School has always been dear and near to my heart. And as a reminder, school has started. So with Carson City schools back in session, we just want to remind everybody to look for pedestrians alike. And this is always a good reminder for me, myself too, because I leave at dark 30 in the morning, and kids are walking to and from school or to a bus stop. And sometimes we forget those kids who take the bus to and from school. So I like to bring that up and just remind everyone to be attentive, be predictable. And if you walk your kids to school, talk to them about safety as well. We're going to start preparing for winter events. Hopefully, who knows if we're going to have a bad winter or not, but as summer's wrapping up, our highway maintenance staff are starting to prepare our roads and making sure our vehicles are working and that we're ready to go in case there is an event. The plow blades go on to our large vehicle and our equipment, and we will also look at salt and sand in our stockpile. So we're preparing for winter, looking ahead for next summer as well, because we never get to rest, as you know. We do have some projects that will be coming on in the next year. State Route 28 Transit Hub, which is not just a transit hub, but it's going to be a construction project with 250 parking spaces for people to park, also watercraft safety inspections, and hopefully folks can hop on transit and use that and have less vehicles driving around up at the lake, and better air quality for that. US 50 in Dayton resurfacing will be occurring next year, and we're also going to launch a project to rehabilitate and resurface nearly 6 miles of US 50 in East Dayton between Fortune Drive and, I say it wrong every time, I'm going to say it right this time, Shaves Road. Yes. Thanks to Chris, he taught me that. See, I do pay attention. I want y'all to know. That project will include repaving, installing medians and adding safer access, and install traffic signals at at the intersection of Cardelli Road, Riverboat Road, and 6 Mile Canyon Road. It's just for a reference if anybody wanted to know where that was going. I also wanted to respond. The chair had asked us about August redistribution. We got a lower number this year. I like to say it's because we've been better at filling our pots and using our funding. We're looking at approximately $110,000 for that. You were asking me where that money is going to go right now. We just found out about it last week. I think it was last week. It's all blur's day to me. And we're probably going to be setting it up with projects that are already underway, and they might have a need for adjustment or doing any pre-AC conversions. So we haven't identified which projects they'll be going to yet, but we are looking at that. About the cyber hack, NDOT did not, we had one day that we were sent home the first day it had occurred. I was walking in the office and everyone was like, hey, you can turn around and leave. And I was like, ha ha ha. I didn't believe them, walked in, and then I found out we had, our systems were down. And NDOT did come back immediately. We were all back in the office on the second day. Our systems are working fairly well. Some of them we haven't connected back to the state yet, but our IT and our cybersecurity folks are working very closely together. So just make sure you always are doing your due diligence and change your passwords often and make them long. Unless you have any questions for me, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything else to add.
I didn't bring it up yet, but where do we stand on HSIP funding?
I thought Chris might bring that up. Why don't you go ahead and take your thunder?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not specifically a CAMPO item, but for CAMPO's benefit, that Carson City was awarded 2 of the 3 HSIP projects that we applied for. We heard that late last week. So I'll speak more about that at the RTC meeting.
Wanted to cover it when NDOT was here, because that's where it comes from.
Thank
Okay.
you. And I will add, I'm really proud of the team. We had worked together when I was in a different role at NDOT for our transportation alternative program. And the safety section kept saying they wanted to do the same thing for their group. And then I got into this role and I was like, hey, remember when? So we really pushed it and they got it out. And I was really proud of them moving forward. And I hope to see us get some good use with that HSIP funds for not just NDOT, but for the community as well throughout the state.
Okay, thank you. All right, coming near the end here, let's get to agenda item 6C. Other items that any of the folks need to bring up at this point? Any announcements? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our 7th item, our second opportunity for general public comment. Do we have any folks in the audience that would like to speak up at this point? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will move on to item 8, adjournment. And we will reconvene as RTC in
5 minutes.
5. Okay, just checking. Okay, thank you. Meeting's over.
Thanks. I'm going to call the Regional Transportation Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Schutte,
Here.
Commissioner Dodson.
Here.
Commissioner Maloney.
Here.
Commissioner Novak. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. I'm now on to agenda item number 3, which is our opening public comment. Do I have any public comment? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 4. This is the approval of our minutes of August 13, 2025. Do I have any corrections or changes needed? If not, I'll accept a motion for approval, please.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 5A, which is discussion and possible action on a draft list of regionally significant transportation projects within Carson City. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
Yes, you may. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict and will be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. So do I have Chris and Casey going to take us through this item, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. Casey Sylvester, Transportation Traffic Engineer, is with me as well. He helped develop the scopes and the cost estimates for these projects. So if we get into some of the details, Casey can help answer some of those questions. This item before you is to discuss potential projects to submit to the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization as projects for inclusion in CAMPO's Regional Transportation Plan. I'll start by going over Exhibit 1 real quick, and I'll just bring it up on the screen for anyone who doesn't have the item. The Exhibit 1 is the list of current Carson City projects in the current Regional Transportation Plan. Those in the column that says RTP status is staff's recommendation on what to do with those projects. Some of those projects have been constructed and completed and therefore no longer need to be in the RTP. Other projects are being replaced by new projects in the new project list or draft project list, and therefore this current project is no longer valid. And other projects are being removed for changing priorities, or they were determined to be less significant than they were in the past. And so this is the list of projects that is currently in the RTP and the status of what will happen with them going forward. Exhibit 2, and I'll switch over real quick here to that one, is the draft list of projects for possible inclusion in CAMPO's Regional Transportation Plan. This project has, or this exhibit has a number of columns. The project numbers are only specific to this exhibit. They don't have any relative significance outside of giving them a number for this purpose today, but that's listed there. Project name, project description, project limits, primary project type being roadway, multimodal, or transit, potential implementation year, whether it's between now and 2036 or after 2036 to 2050, an estimated cost using current cost year information, 2025, and a recommendation on staff's and Carson City's recommendation for fiscal constraint priority, whether it's top priority, high priority, or just normal priority in terms of should the project be included as a fiscally constrained project or not. So there's a number of projects here presented on this list. Most of these have, as I mentioned, come from prior RTP. Those in bold are new, were not included in the current Regional Transportation Plan, and are primarily a result of recently completed corridor studies or traffic analyses or a review of the travel demand model or developer contribution projects on regionally significant roads like arterials and collectors and so forth. So this is the general list of projects. I will note that Carson City staff, we did go through a project prioritization process very similar to that used by our district prioritization process. We factored in those components. We also factored in the elements that we discussed at the CAMPO meeting that CAMPO will be looking for to consider those as well as the ones we look at. So this does include things like pavement condition index and traffic volume and those same similar factors that we consider as part of the district process. The order of these projects is generally the order that they came out through that prioritization process. And so those projects at the top of the list are generally a higher priority than those projects at the bottom of the list following that scoring system. And so that's basically the summary of the projects as we've recommended them. And I will turn it back to you, Madam Chair, for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you so much. Does any member have a question they want to start? It can't be this easy. Okay, sorry. I was like, wow, that's way too easy. Miss Maloney.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about the I-580 395 interchange project? And I guess my personal feeling is that is a very important project to Carson City. I understand it's not RTC's facility, right? Carson City doesn't own that interchange. And but I'm seeing it potentially completed, 25 years from now. I've personally experienced sitting there for 3-4+ cycles when something goes wrong. And I guess my question is, how can we make this project a priority sooner than 2036? Is there an option there?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think this is one of those projects that has a lot of moving parts. So just as a little bit of a history, right? Commissioner Novak knows that the project was identified as part of the Carson Freeway, and there were a lot of phases, and the last phase for the completion of the interchange has not been built. NDOT recently completed their US 395 Southern Sierra Corridor study, and through that study identified that the design as it was intended to be probably isn't going to meet the need that it once was going to meet. And so something else is needed to convey the traffic, particularly from the end of the freeway turning left to go south into Douglas County. That study identified a bunch of elements that could do that, including frontage roads, grade-separated interchanges, an elevated freeway, elements like that. But it stopped short of identifying what all those elements are. And so there isn't a specific recommendation in that corridor study that says this is what the interchange, the end of the freeway, that connection needs to look like. So there's still a little bit of ambiguity, and further analysis, specifically a traffic analysis, is really needed to analyze, well, what is it going to take to move the traffic? What is the design going to look like? What are the impacts? What's the cost of making this a better connection at that location? I think that's something, potentially CAMPO could study in the future through, Unified Planning Work Program funds or in a cooperative agreement with NDOT to lead an effort like that. But at this point, it's hard to say. Maybe we can get it sooner rather than later, but it's hard to say what it is that we're going to be doing at that location for completion of the freeway project at this point.
At least 11 years. No, I think the other thing is to remind everyone when that interchange is completed, Carson City will owe the state
Approximately
$7.7 million. So there's no freebies. I just like to remind us all, right? No freebies, but certainly probably an area that will just become more and more congested as Douglas County does more and more build out for themselves too. So, okay.
Just like to, remind everybody, NDOT agreed to build this freeway in 1986.
Yeah. Like I said, they're right on it.
And, well, they have other needs. But, there's the freeway, end of the freeway, there's extending Curry Street south and dealing with the park and ride lot. It's all tied together. And I agree that we really don't need to back off at this point. We have to keep it up there. And, the opinion is, well, if you just built it as originally designed, it wouldn't work. Well, it'd be better than it is today. That's what are we looking for perfection? Because we've got a new signal going in at Appian Way. There's, further signals down in Douglas County. and it's not going to resolve itself without spending way too much money. So I think, if we're willing to accept something less than perfection, we might be able to get something built there. So, and if it's $7 million, you can always ask to renegotiate it, right?
Always, always.
Or does it take an act of
renegotiate.
Congress? This stuff happens. Okay,
There
that's
you
all
go.
I'll say at this point.
I mean, just to wrap up my comment there, I mean, I'm only one vote on this commission, but if there's anything that RTC can do to help kind of nudge that forward, whether that's, a support letter or making this the top priority instead of the second priority, if there are any actions, I would probably be supportive of those.
Well, I don't think we know in NDOT's priority list where this sits.
They have not shared
Right.
where
I
this
was gonna
project
say,
sits in their
I'm
priority.
not sure 1 or 2 will be even in the, in that ballpark. We might be pretty far down on the
This,
NDOT list.
I'll add, and if we want to have a larger discussion about this project at the discretion of the DA, that, this project could be eligible for a variety of federal grants, could be really competitive for things like build or infra, particularly because of the freight component and the regionality of it. That would, per our agreement, that would negate Carson City's debt should we get a large federal grant to do a project like this.
Certainly that is worthy of pursuit.
And
Mr. Dotson. Oh, sorry.
Just related to that, has NDOT completed the worksheets that you talked about in the CAMPO meeting?
Commissioner Johnson, they have not yet. We have a meeting scheduled with NDOT for late next week.
Just curious to see where that would shake out, with our new priorities there.
And then, Chris, if it would help at some point, do we need to have an RTC delegation at an NDOT board meeting? They seem to react to
Public
public
showing up.
showing up, especially all the Tahoe folks kept showing up and showing up and showing up. And said, this has been around a long time. So maybe all the board members don't realize that. So thanks.
Any other comments? Is there any public comment on this item? No? Okay, and I'll bring it back up here. Is everybody ready for motion? We like the list and work hard on DOT. That's their direction. Ms. Maloney.
Just one more comment. I think the table that was included in the packet that noted the projects to be removed was really insightful and kind of told a quiet story about the evolution of Carson City, things like widening Fifth Street and some of those big, different widening Roop Street, and the big Fifth Street project. And having those removed, I think, was a really nice cleanup of the list to reflect where we are today and our constraints. So really good job to staff on that.
And Chris, I think I'd mentioned this to you at some point, you'll have this on a map as well, because this is not the easiest thing for everybody to understand. So I think, you go out to the public meeting and show them, because you've done some pretty good jobs on the mapping and other items.
So does anyone want to make a motion to Ms. Maloney?
I would love to move to direct staff to inform CAMPO the RTC input regarding the RTP as discussed.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Again, good job. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 5B. This is discussion and possible action for a contract for Kimley Horn and Associates to provide design services for District 3 pavement preservations. Casey, take us through this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Casey Sylvester, Transportation and Traffic Engineer. I'd like to note that this is our first design contract for projects from District 3 that were approved in June, that this is a combination of several of those projects, the racetrack road area preservation, both the north and south sections of South Edmonds Drive and the Hells Bells and Marsh Road. I'm available for any questions.
Does any member have a question? Mr. Novak?
I saw the item about the optional task to look at the shoulders, and I'm definitely in favor of that. Anytime we have excess material, let's try and use it, because we're paying for it anyway. So figure, just check out your right-of-way, make sure we can do it.
Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Mr. Costa?
Mark Costa, a resident of Carson City. Just had a question on 5B and this pavement preservation project. Just a couple questions. Are we going to do this for every year for every district to have a consultant go ahead and work up a plan? And so question number two, is this really needed for this? I know we've looked at different types of ways that the roads need to be repaired, and we had our own pavement study done end of last year, and so we need to spend the $188,000 on this. So I just wanted to know if, a little bit more about what's the mechanics on why we have a consultant to work on our preservation plan for, this is just one of our districts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich, did you want to speak to, because this is actually the design services for the projects. Is this normal and typical what we will do for each year's projects?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this contract, well, I'll say yes, this is for design services with Kimley Horn. So we're doing the physical design and creation of the plans for this District 3 project, which is a couple of different projects, as Casey mentioned. We have other District 3 projects, Empire Ranch Road, that is being designed internally by city staff, and we have another project on Fairview and Butt-Eye in District 3 that will also go to consultant services. We try to use consultants strategically, given staff resources internally, and right now we're limited on internal staff resources from a project management and a design standpoint, so that's why we're reaching out to consultants to assist us to deliver these projects. In the future, it's hard to say if we have internal capabilities. We will keep them in-house first and then go to consultants second. But in this case, we needed some consultant support to complete the designs of this and one other project.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any other public comment? Okay, I'll bring it back up here then. Mr. Dotson?
I move to approve the contract as presented.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, we're now going to move on to agenda item 5C. This is discussion and possible action on a contract with CA Group for the North Carson Complete Streets feasibility study. Mr. Dotson, may I have your disclosure, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My son is David Dotson, who is employed by CA Group and serves as a vice president. This item is to consider the award of a contract to CA Group, and I believe that the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I believe I have a disqualifying conflict and will be abstaining on this matter.
Thank you so much. Okay, Kelly, would you give us the highlights of this, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Kelly Norman, Senior Transportation Planner. A request for qualifications was released on March 4th, 2025, earlier this year for North Carson Complete Streets Feasibility Study. 7 applications were received. The Review and Selection Committee selected CA Group to recommend to the RTC. A draft contract and scope can be found in Attachment 1, beginning on packet page 52. Vice President of CA Group, David Dotson, is here tonight and will be working with Dean Mottram on supporting staff for this effort. That concludes my
you.
comments.
Does any member have a question for Kelly or the proposed contractor? Don't see any. Is there any public comment on this item? No? Well, then I will accept a motion. Ms. Shute, or you go ahead.
I move to approve the contract as presented.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions?
Aye.
Thank you. Please let the record reflect it was 401. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item 5D. This one is just for discussion for our presentation regarding our fiscal 2025 transportation activities by Public Works. Mr. Martinovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to highlight a few items in this report related to activities from fiscal 25 for the Regional Transportation and the Transportation Division. First of all, I wanted to note that on the Ash Canyon Flat project, which is the bullet at the bottom of packet page 128 at the front page of the staff report, says it was awarded $6.3 million. That is true, but in fact, Federal Lands has come back and said, we think the project's going to be more expensive, and they've gone ahead and awarded us $9.6 million in federal funds for our same amount. So that was news as of 2 weeks ago. We are now working with them to finalize the scope and a memorandum of agreement, which would come likely before this board for that. So the project's now approximately $10 million is what they've indicated.
I'm not sure what that actually means, because if I'm getting the same that I thought was 6.3, that's scary inflation. So I'm not really sure, but we'll take the extra money.
They've approved the extra money, but I just
There you
wanted to
go.
note that because the dollar amounts you'll be seeing in the future are larger.
Wow. It's a lot.
Additionally, a few on the second page regarding Highway Safety Improvement Program funds, I wanted to note, as I mentioned at the end of the CAMPO meeting, that Carson City was awarded 2 of the 3 we requested. We received funding and approval for the College Parkway Safety Project, looking at pedestrians safety at a number of areas at College Parkway and Fairview, as well as the Solomon Road Project, looking at safety improvements in front of primarily Carson High School, but other elements of Solomon Road as well. We were not successful in the Curry Street project. And the reason given to me from NDOT was that there were other safety priorities in the state that ranked higher, and we were using this funding for adjusting utilities and street lighting, and there were other needs from a fatality standpoint, and so it just didn't rank high enough for eligibility at that point. But that's the status of that. So we're going to work with NDOT to execute LPA agreements, which will come back before the RTC at some point here in the near future to get those projects underway. And into design for the next couple of years. So wanted to note that. Moving on to funding side of things. First I'll mention Western Nevada Safe Routes to School is a nice summary there, and Scott's not here tonight. He's a little under the weather, but the outreach that they do and the number of people that they reach out to and engage with on a week to week, month to month, year to year basis is pretty incredible. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Scott and to this board's support for continuing the Safe Routes program and for Scott for all the work he does and the school district as well for letting us come into the school and present and give our assemblies and everything else. So super great program. Want to continue, obviously. Kudos to everybody involved. On the funding side, on the capital projects funding summary, wanted to note that we currently have 25 projects across the last fiscal year for a total of $56 million worth of investment in transportation-related projects. That's not just transportation funds, that's all city funds in general, but that's a lot of projects here locally for a year in the budget standpoint. When we look at projects we've budgeted just in 25, it was $11.8 million, started in 25 for new projects on road improvement projects. That includes $3 million from American Rescue Plan Act on local road projects. Those are under construction and nearly complete now. In fact, Menlo Drive is a punch list walk is scheduled for, I believe, next week. So coming together on the projects, those ARPA-funded local road projects. Last thing I'll note is when we look at Exhibit 1, a ratio of state federal grant dollars to local match, we've received since fiscal year 20, the last 6 fiscal years or so, $45 million in state and federal grant funding, leveraged against $10 million of local funding. So we're able to continue to get more than our local funds to deliver projects here in the region. And we're going to continue to do that. And wins like the Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP funds at a 95-5 match will help that ratio over the long term. So super excited and want to continue that going forward for sure. The last page is Exhibit 2. That's just the current and near-term transportation capital projects and plans. So it's got corridor studies, North Carson's on there. It's got our District 3 projects highlighted, such as Empire Ranch Road and South Edmonds and Racetrack Road. So those are all on there as well. And so these are the projects we're currently working on and you all see as part of the project status report every other month. And I will turn it back to you, Madam Chair, for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member have a question? Just nice job.
Yeah, and I hope regarding activities and the conversation about discussions in regards to Carson City's roads, I would love to have another discussion regarding how to finance our local roads and get something back before the public so that we can figure this out in a way that everyone is comfortable with.
Any other comments? Nope. Okay, that was a discussion only, so we'll move on to item 6A, which, Chris, your report, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of items. We are going to run our 2025 pavement condition assessment using our paver analysis model and understand when the projects we've completed, like Menlo Drive and others we've completed, what does our PCI look like a year later after our survey? So we're going to run that analysis, report that through the annual monitoring report that CAMPO receives. We are looking at also developing a long-range 5-year project list. It probably be pretty high level. It'll probably look at some of the worst roads in Carson City, such that if there is available funding in the future from some source, we have a list of projects that we could easily apply and deliver. So we're going to start working on that. We are also coordinating with NDOT related to their US 50 rehabilitation project, which runs from I-580 to Deer Run Road. That's scheduled for construction in 2027. We're working with them on potentially transfer of lighting infrastructure and upgrades to stormwater and multi-use path and elements like that, and trying to get as best of a project as we can. And if we need to throw in a few dollars of our own to get a much better product, we're considering that as well. One of the items we're working with them on is the use of what are called carbon reduction funds that CAMPO has available to rehabilitate that multi-use path. That's an eligible use of those funds, so looking to do that. We are also doing public outreach on some selected projects, including our vulnerable user project, our Ash Flat project. We're going to do some public outreach to that community. Carmine Street area, as we develop those plans, we're going to do some outreach to those folks and make sure they're engaged in projects that affect the streets that they live on and drive every day. Last couple of items here. Long line, short line, if you've noticed, has started across the city. Striping is being refreshed, so please don't drive in any wet paint. They work at night, but yeah, doesn't come off your car. And then William Street is continuing. It's going to ramp up here in the near future with granite construction beginning work in the corridor for some of the utility replacements. Right now we've been undergrounding. The work's been for the undergrounding of the overhead utilities, the electrical, the AT&T, Charter Communications, and other services on those poles. That's the work you've been seeing out there. But Granite Construction, who's doing a lot of the roadway and utility replacement work, will be starting here in the near future. So it's about to get a lot busier. There will be some traffic congestion items as we maneuver traffic through the areas with the traffic signals. So, definitely please continue to visit the businesses. But if you can avoid William Street, that would be my recommendation. Avoid William Street proper. But we'll work to get through traffic through as best we can. But I'll ask for everyone's patience on that one. So,
And as a reminder for the public, when is William Street supposed to be done?
I believe it's supposed to be done about a year and a little bit from now, probably about a year and a half.
Anyway, one of the businesses that I frequent there, she says, "Is this 5 more years?" I said,
It's not 5 years. No.
But that's what she wanted to know. I said, no. Oh, is there?
I think we'll be doing utilities and concrete work during the winter. Paving is not going to occur in the winter, but
Yeah.
there's other work,
But
plenty of work to continue.
She really
through.
did through the window and say, 5 more years of this, Mayor? And I'm like, I hope not, because we'll owe a lot more money, or they will. Something won't go right, so year and a half.
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else any questions? Okay, then we will move on to agenda item 6B, which is our July street operations report. What would you like to highlight for us, Chris?
I have nothing that I was specifically going to highlight, if that's okay with the board.
I just please let Mr. King know how much we appreciate this work and showing the community what they do. I think they're the unsung hero, right? That they don't get any accolades or yays or things of that nature. And I think it's important that this report is available for people to see all that other work, because a lot of times people don't understand, why isn't that road fixed? But when you start to look at some of this, all these activities must occur. You have to do them. And so please, again, just let that staff know how much we appreciate their hard work. Does anybody have any questions on this, Porter? Okay, then we are on 6C. Does anyone have anything to share? Mr. Novak?
Having Chris mention the striping contracts, I noticed that the parking lots in town have used yellow paint for their parking space markings. Anything open to the public supposed to follow the MUTCD, and those are supposed to be white markings. I don't know if Carson has any review of that, but I let Walmart know via the internet email, and they got back to me in a day. And I think the main comment was, I told them yellow paint costs more than white paint. So in the future, we might see some different colors, but yeah, the standard is white for parking lots. That's all I got.
Okay. And then when we look at the street report, so I noticed we don't really have the 1/4 cent sales tax for June. Is that because of the reporting issues?
Yes, correct, Madam Chair. The items in blue and the missing item there reflect that we haven't received payment of the basic cities county relief sales tax. We have received confirmation from the DMV what the fuel gallons sold was. We received, so we know the gallons sold, that's reported correctly, but we haven't received the revenue from those gallons sold, and that's related to the issues with the state and what's happening with them. We're not able to receive those payments from them at this time.
Did we get any updates on a potential distribution date?
I haven't received any updates, but I will say that yesterday we received our complete streets allocation for the prior month. So something's working at the state, but not the fuel taxes.
That's not the one we need.
That's not the big one we need.
But
we did get a check
that's
from
the
them.
$1,000 a month one.
We did get that just the other day.
Okay. I do know that some of the other areas that receive this funding don't have cash flow to actually sustain not receiving money for 3 and 4 months. So I just would like you to keep us posted where we are, and not that we can't do interfund loans and things from our general fund to tide us over, but certainly not looking forward to that as a great option for us to keep everything going. So if you can just
I will do
continue
that.
to let us know where that funding is. I know that DOT at a different meeting gave the agency in trouble Zippo on
Well,
the projected date of distribution, so.
If I
Not
may,
good.
Madam Chair, I did speak with our LPA coordinators at NDOT, and they had indicated that they are allowed to process payments. Now, what that means coming from receipt from the state, I don't know. But as far as NDOT's concerned, they are functioning. And we, like I said, we have seen some checks come from the state, and they haven't given me an indication that things like federal reimbursements for our projects are delayed any significant amount. So there has been a delay, but they're back up and running and processing payments.
Let's just keep our fingers crossed. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything? Nothing else? Nothing else? Okay, we'll go to our final public comment. Do we have any final public comment? Nope. All right, with that, is there no objection? We are adjourned. Good meeting. Thank you, everyone.